innocent people suffer the consequences. So I think we have seen how the Gulf War has come out. Some people think it's a victory. But I think when we analyze the situation there, what sort of victory was there as far as the country? Yes, Kuwait was liberated, but the consequences that we have seen has created even a greater danger for the entire world.
The average person, though, who may not understand the intricacies and the diversive nature of Islam, would you say that it is really a matter of perception here? And you touched on that a little earlier. Is there that confusion between religion and terrorism, and is that hazy?
I think there is. Sometimes one wonders whether it's a deliberate attempt on certain parties and certain groups to impose an agenda on the world community, that the Muslim community are by and large involved in terrorist activities, and this community perhaps condones terrorism. They cannot be further from the truth. Islam's position is very, very clear. The Holy Quran makes it very clear that the loss of one innocent life is equivalent to the loss of entire humanity. Now, there cannot be more powerful statement than this. And yet, the notion which is coming into the minds of the ordinary Muslim community is that the Muslim blood is cheap. That has to be demolished. There has to be fairness in pursuing with our foreign policy. When we are referring to the UN resolutions, when we are referring to the law of international legality, it must be balanced. America must come out very clearly now that it has to look into its own entire foreign policy in a very objective manner. And I hope Britain, European Union, will also look into that basis. Here, Britain has to act as a calming force in this situation. And once we analyze the situation further, it will make sense to us that we do not need to compound the situation, and the notion in the eyes of the Muslim community and the overall community that there is not a war between the West and Islam. It's a war between people who respect civilized values and these criminal activities, who perform the criminal activities. And this includes the narcotic gangs, the mafia gangs, the white supremacists in America who are involved in the Oklahoma bombing. These are various groups that sadly we seem to be not giving much thought to it and concentrating on perhaps one group that may be involved.
Iqbal Sakrani of the Muslim Council of Britain, thanks a lot for your time. Jonathan?
Pakistan is one of only 3 countries in the world that recognize Afghanistan's Taliban rulers. The U.S. is waiting on Islamabad's response to several specific requests aimed at Osama bin Laden. Among the requests are access to Pakistani intelligence on bin Laden and the Taliban, for Pakistan to close its border with Afghanistan. The U.S. also asks that Pakistan stop supplying fuel to the Taliban and grant warplanes access to its Pakistani airspace, if asked. And top U.S. officials say they've made one more request, that Pakistani and moderate Arab states prevent wealthy benefactors from sending money to Osama bin Laden. Friday, Pakistan said it would cooperate fully with the U.S., but officials in Washington say that level of cooperation remains to be seen. With more from Islamabad, we're joined now by political analyst Talat Hussain. There is now a meeting of the National Security Council, I gather, and the Pakistani cabinet. They are going to make some important decisions. What do you think we're likely to hear?
Well, what we're likely to hear is that there is complete unanimity in the ranks of the government. That will be the official line on whatever stand Musharraf has already taken. That is to provide full support to the plan of the Bush administration to have retaliatory strikes whenever they deem fit. We are not yet sure what is going to be the specific detail of the Pakistani response. Of course, this remains a matter of high security involving not just the core of the Pakistani establishment, but also the core planners in White House, in the Pentagon, in the State Department. So, but there is no doubt that the Pakistani establishment over the past 2 days has been able to drive themselves towards a consensus point where they want to actually come across as a reasonable country, staying along with the rest of the civilization of the world and helping the U.S. fight terrorism.
General Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan's leader, is a military dictator. Why does he need consensus? Is his government too weak to simply make this decision on its own?
It's not that his government is too weak to make this decision. In fact, he is an political almighty. His power flows from the barrel of the gun, and on top of it, he has got 6 portfolios under his belt. He commands the armed forces of the country. He's the president, he's the chief executive, he's the defense minister, he's also the head of the National Security Council, and so on and so forth. It is just that the scale of the tragedy inside the U.S. and the scale of the response from the U.S. is so massive that even a powerful ruler like Musharraf cannot take a decision on his own. And also, this is the implications of whatever options that he may exercise are not going to touch just his government. It is also going to touch the social fabric of Pakistan. It is also going to touch the relationship between the liberal sections of the society as well as the religious sections of the society. It will also impact the future political plans that he has in mind. So it is not just the decision of one man. It is actually a decision that is going to impact the lives of all the Pakistanis and also the entire region. That is why I guess there's a lot of consultation going on. This is not a one man's decision because the stakes are a bit too high.
Implicit in what the administration is asking or demanding of Pakistan is this, that Pakistan is part of the problem up till now and now has to become part of the solution, that Pakistani money and fuel and cooperation are helping the Taliban government, and that Pakistan has a great deal of intelligence that it could be sharing and has not up till now. Is that premise right? Is Pakistan essentially cooperating with the Taliban and cooperating, in a sense, with Osama bin Laden in the past months, in the past years?
I think it will be illogical to say that Pakistan is not playing any role in dealing with the Taliban. Of course, Pakistan has been playing a role, and there is a military side to this role, but there's also the diplomatic and the political side to this role. After all, whenever the messages needed to be conveyed to the Taliban, for instance, issues relating to the UN and issues of closing down the terrorist camps allegedly run by Osama bin Laden, Pakistan was used as a conduit. But at the same time, I think over the years, the Pakistani establishment has made a clear-cut distinction between supporting and backing the Taliban against the backing that the Northern Alliance has been getting from other countries, and backing Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden may have become, for various reasons, a popular figure with some sections of the Pakistani society, but he is not the main concern that the Pakistani establishment has inside Afghanistan. If anything, Osama bin Laden, over the years, because of his very poor record with Washington and the activities that he's allegedly involved in, has become an albatross around Pakistan's neck. The entire world comes knocking on Pakistan's door and makes demands on it vis-a-vis Osama bin Laden, demands that Pakistan over the years has discovered it cannot fulfill. So Osama bin Laden is as much a problem for Pakistan as he has become for the world as well.
Political analyst Talat Hussain, thanks very much for talking with us. Zain?
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, flags flying from every window, donors in long lines at the blood banks. Americans rally to show their support and to respond in any way they can. But how do you respond to an outrage like this? Jeff Greenfield takes a look at the nature of America's resolve.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941,
from the moment Franklin Roosevelt declared war, American men rushed to enlist. And the home front swung into action as well. Women and children collected rubber. Civilians gave blood, scrap metal.
And you have wisely loaned money to your...
They bought bonds to fund the war. They painted their windows to foil an enemy air attack. And they rationed everything from food to gasoline, all in pursuit of the unconditional surrender of clearly defined enemies.
Okay, it's an A card, 3 gallons.
There was also a less noble side to our response. Japanese Americans were interned in camps.
Some among them were potentially dangerous.
They were targeted for abuse. In the first days after Pearl Harbor, major magazines aired features like this one, How to Tell Your Friends from the Japs. 45 years after World War II, the Gulf War brought a different kind of response. No draft, no home front discomfort, but a broad national show of support. And we knew what to do after the Oklahoma City bombing. The national mourning, the shared grief, exactly the right responses to a single spasmodic act of madness.
America is not alone in mourning its dead. All around the world, people have gathered for vigils and memorials for the victims. For more, we go to Liz George in London. Liz?
Thank you, John. The NATO alliance is now facing up to its commitment to support the United States. The essence of its latest resolution, an attack against one is an attack against all. But joining in armed retaliation is a call some member states may be reluctant to take. Diana Muriel reports.
A time for respect and remembrance. The 19 ambassadors to NATO shoulder to shoulder, observing 3 minutes of silence at midday on Friday, along with millions of other Europeans. They stand in readiness following Wednesday's affirmation of Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, the first time a commitment has been given to a collective defense against an attack on an alliance member. Quite what that commitment will involve is less clear. Some alliance members, like Britain, have promised strong support for any NATO effort. Even Norway, reported to be less enthusiastic, says its commitment is firm.
Our resources are more limited, of course, than the United States resources, but we will certainly put military resources at the disposal of any operation that the alliance would decide. There should be no doubt about that. Special forces or whatever we could bring to bear on the situation.
The British and the French could also provide elite troops to any operation if required. But support from others, like the Netherlands, appears more muted.
We will be with you, mentally, morally, and possibly also in concrete terms. But what it will be at that stage, I can't answer today.
Former NATO chief Willy Klaus believes some members of the NATO alliance would be unwilling to participate in direct military action, particularly if that involved attacks on countries that are shown to have harboured or supported the terrorists responsible for Tuesday's acts of terror.
It depends what countries and what could be the consequences of the military actions against those countries. Are we speaking about countries controlling nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, yes or no? It's a big difference, you know.
Until a terrorist target is identified, NATO allies are understood to be providing military intelligence to assist the United States in their investigation. As the 19 national flags of the NATO alliance fly at half-staff, the time for action could be approaching. The United States has yet to make specific demands for NATO assistance, but that is expected here in the coming days and weeks. Diana Muriel, CNN, at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
There were scenes of grief across the world on Friday and an unprecedented show of solidarity as people of all nations remembered Tuesday's victims. In Berlin, an emotional memorial ceremony at the Brandenburg Gate. And later, a march through the streets and a plea for peace. And in Jerusalem, a candlelit vigil at the gates of the ancient city that was attended by more than 100 Palestinian mourners. Around the world, a wave of anti-Americanism has been building in Arab communities for years. Observers say the U.S. support for Israel is one of the main reasons why. Our chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, has more.
These pictures of Palestinians celebrating the terrorist attack on the United States horrified all those who were in mourning. Palestinian leaders were quick to point out that these were only isolated incidents by what they called an ignorant few, and Chairman Yasser Arafat immediately condemned the attacks.
We are completely shocked, unbelievable.
Later, Arafat was seen giving blood in a symbolic gesture of solidarity with America. Arab allies, the Iranian president, and even Libya have strongly condemned what happened, saying that it violates Islamic principles. But on the streets of all these countries, anti-Americanism has been building. Moderates are being eclipsed by extremists after almost a year of violence in the Middle East, the Palestinian Intifada in Israel. Experts in radical Islamic terrorism say masterminds